Hey gorgeous, welcome back to another episode of The Should Life. Before we jump into the juicy stuff, I am so excited to share with you that my 12-week group coaching program called Extraordinary is starting August 30th. Extraordinary is for the one who's ready to discover who they are and why they're here. This is a group coaching program unlike anything else. This isn't about me teaching you lessons. This is about you remembering what's been within you all along. I love being in group spaces while I'm integrating information because you're completely immersed in a community of like-minded people who are going through the same process as you are. Some of my closest friends are people I've met in group environments like this. So this program is for you to give the microphone to the quiet nudging of the inner voice. You know what I'm talking about. This is the program for you to know your value and your worth, to feel grounded and at peace with who you are, and to get curious about your unique gifts and purpose in this world. So I am so excited about what is included in this program. It's too much to actually explain here, especially for the price of $555. This is kind of ridiculous, but this is the kind of exciting stuff that comes from me following the guidance of my own inner voice. This is going to be a 12-week group program where we will meet every week so you can really start to integrate this inner voice work into your real life. This group is going to be kept really small, like I'm talking a maximum of 5 people. So you're going to have plenty of opportunities for individualized coaching as that shows up. And on top of group coaching, each participant is also going to have a one-on-one 2-hour inner voice session with me before this group even gets started. Oh yeah, and those sessions alone are $222. So essentially this whole 12-week group coaching program is $333. Kind of crazy, right? Anyway, I cannot wait to see what incredible transformations happen. And this is an opportunity to go deep into your intuition. You know what your inner voice is guiding you to do. You aren't missing any signs. You don't have to ask your spirit guides. You actually aren't unsure. Not in your core. Not at the core of your being. You know if this feels like the next best step for you. So instead of ignoring it, trust and step forward into the life that you deserve and you desire. I also have payment plans available. Learn more and claim your spot by going to nomoreshouldlife.com. That's nomoreshouldlife.com, and I'll see you there. Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to The Should Life. This is your host, Jessica Lee Labe, and today we're talking about how to start cultivating a relationship with your inner voice. Let's get into it. Hey gorgeous, welcome back to Season 2, Episode 2, where we are continuing our conversation about inner voice work in the real world. I love this because when I first heard about inner voice work, the thoughts that I had were things like, well, sure, it works for her. I mean, she doesn't have a real job, quote unquote, real job, right? Well, yeah, that works for her. She doesn't have kids. She doesn't have the responsibilities that I do. Also, she doesn't have the mind that I do. She doesn't understand the chaos that goes on in this noggin. Like, can you relate? Okay. So over time, I developed this relationship with my inner voice, and I see firsthand in my life and in my clients' lives how inner voice work is so freaking impactful in our everyday life. It's not just something that we pull out when we're on a retreat or when we're on vacation. And that's what makes it like even more powerful is when we can be in a boardroom, when we can be on a date, when we can be in a stressful situation or a fearful situation, and we also have the ability to allow the mind to take a break, to rest, to quiet down, and allow the inner voice, our soul, our higher self, to rise up and to actually honor what that deeper part of ourself desires for us in that moment. I've seen it time and time again with my clients. I work with high achieving women. This means I work with strong minded women. And I've seen the amazing transformation that you can have when you allow your intuition to start to guide your life. So, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about starting to cultivate a relationship with your inner voice. What are the first steps that you can take? We're going to keep this really easy and really simple. The mind likes to overcomplicate things. The mind likes to tell us that we're not doing enough and what we are doing isn't good enough. The inner voice is not like that. And the inner voice, first and foremost, what I just want to put out there is, like anything else that is super valuable in our life, inner voice work is a practice. This is not something that is going to come overnight. This is maybe not something that's going to feel easy at first. Like, it will feel easeful when you get into it. It will feel like flow. It will feel like you're floating downstream as opposed to fighting upstream. But when you're used to only hearing from the mind, allowing the inner voice to come forward and to actually honor what it is that it's telling you, it can feel difficult. So in honor of keeping things simple, my first suggestion for cultivating a relationship with your inner voice is to start with yes or no questions. Okay, so because we're not used to hearing from the inner voice, the mind may want to butt in. It may be very confused. It may be resistant to what's happening. And so asking the inner voice open-ended questions can kind of open us up to confusion. So this is very important, and I think such a necessary first step is starting with yes or no questions and doing this for a while. Because what we really want is we want to understand how our own unique inner voice communicates with us, how it feels in the body, what it says, or maybe it's going to send us images. This is the point where we really just are curious and we're staying open. So when we ask yes or no questions, we're going to ask the inner voice yes or no questions about things that we're already doing. This is another objection that the mind may have to what it perceives as adding something to your plate, right? So the mind can feel overwhelmed. This is a new thing. You don't have time for this. And because of that, first of all, I totally hear you. Everyone is crazy busy. I get it. Minds out there. I hear you. You are heard. You are seen. And because of that, we are going to ask yes or no questions to the inner voice about things that we already do. So we're not adding anything to the plate. We are integrating inner voice work into the way that we're already living. And so what does this look like in real life? This looks like getting up in the morning, and what do you do first thing? For me, I make coffee. So these are things that we do on autopilot, we mindlessly do. And so in those mindless activities, we're going to bring in some mindfulness. We're going to bring in the inner voice and see if this is something that we actually want to be doing, because it's probably something, like I said, we just do on autopilot. So is this really aligned, or am I just doing this because I've just always been doing this? We go downstairs, we start the coffee maker, and before we even do that, we ask the inner voice a yes or no question. Inner voice, do I want coffee this morning? and then we wait, and maybe we hear a yes or no. Maybe we feel a yes or a no, meaning maybe we feel light and expansive, or maybe we feel tension and contraction. Maybe we see an image or like a moving picture. These are all different ways that your inner voice can start to communicate with you. This is also a hint as to where in your body the inner voice resides. So your inner voice is also found somewhere in your body. I've also had clients who have described the inner voice as like surrounding their entire body. So that may be true for you as well. If you want a hint as to maybe where to start, a lot of times individuals feel their inner voice in their body like in their gut. Like you think of that phrase gut instinct. There's a reason for that because a lot of us feel our intuition or our inner voice in our gut. I would say the second most common place for the inner voice to reside in the body is in the chest or the heart space. So if you are feeling like I have no idea where the inner voice is in my body, maybe try to tune into those spaces and see if something shows up. But maybe you're only going to hear words and maybe you're only going to see images. Stay open, stay curious, stay playful, right? So let's say the inner voice sends you a yes when you ask it if you want coffee. Beautiful. So you make the coffee. But we have just a little we have this nudge already to start our day from our soul. So already we're like feeding ourselves. This is beautiful. We're like nourishing ourselves. So maybe if you're like me, you put creamer in your coffee. Once again, we're not going to do this mindlessly. We're going to invite in the inner voice into the conversation. So once again, another yes or no question. Inner voice, do I want creamer in my coffee this morning? And then we wait to hear or see or feel the yes or no. And so through different parts of the day, when we're doing these mindless tasks that we typically do, we're just going to start to invite the inner voice into these conversations. And like I said, we're going to do this for a while because we really want to start to feel and have some like foundation of what the inner voice experience is like in our own body. Now, there are also some fun ways that you can integrate inner voice work into your everyday life. And one way that I think is just really fun because the inner voice likes to have fun with you, okay? We're so used to living from the mind that takes things so freaking seriously. The inner voice is here to remind you that the whole purpose of life is to enjoy, is to flow, is to find fun and play. So it's going to keep guiding you towards the next best thing. And one way that I really enjoyed cultivating a deeper relationship with my inner voice was through letting it literally take the wheel. I mean, not literally, but so once again, let's take a mindless activity. So typically this is like if you go to work, this would be like drive your morning commute. So maybe it's taking the kids to school or running errands. Like, typically we frequent the same places. So choose the route that you want to explore. And at every stop, at every crossroads, at every stoplight or stop sign, you're going to ask the inner voice, what direction would you like me? And you're going to release time. You're going to release any outcomes. You're going to release your schedule. These are all things of the mind. So obviously you want to set aside this time to play. This is your playtime. This is your time with you and your inner voice. And then the other key here, we're cultivating a relationship. So we're building a relationship. This means that when you ask the inner voice and you actually get a response and you hear the response and you feel the response, that means that you're actually going to honor what it's telling you because this is all part of building a relationship. This isn't one-sided where you just ask it questions and then you ignore everything that it's telling you. I mean, you can live that way, and if you're living from the mind, that's probably how you have been living. Fine, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're wanting to cultivate this relationship with your inner voice, this means that you're creating a relationship, which means when you ask it something and you actually hear what it says, you're going to honor what it's telling you, no matter how weird or silly you think it feels or you look. Okay? And then surrender. Sit back and just fucking enjoy it. Enjoy the ride, literally. Okay? This is just like a fun thing that I started doing with my inner voice. And I mean, the neighborhoods that I discovered and the parks that I found that I'm like, seriously, this is like 2 blocks away from my normal route, and I never even knew this existed. This is amazing. Okay, so another tip, let's say that you have spent some time integrating the inner voice into things that you're already doing in your life, and now you want to actually start to carve out some time in your day to dedicate completely to talking to your inner voice. This is beautiful. And I do have some tips about this as well. So there are a few different ways that we can do this. And I want to also add here that you can still carve out this time and have really deep, amazing conversations with your inner voice by just asking yes or no questions. So if you're still in that phase where you're like, you know what, I'm really enjoying these yes or no questions about what I'm already doing in my everyday life, but I want to ask the inner voice maybe some deeper questions, maybe some bigger questions. Maybe there are some things that your mind has been really loud about, and you want to ask your soul what it has to say about this. Feel free to stick with the yes or no questions as you ask those. And then if you'd like to expand into open-ended questions, go ahead and do that as well. Once again, this is all play. This is an amazing, grand experiment in your life. This is opening yourself up to another part of you. So have fun with it. But as you do this, as you set aside this time, the mind can want to stick around for this conversation because it's going to want to know, naturally, it's going to want to know what the inner voice is telling you. It's like, hey, what is this like? What is this enemy trying to tell you? It's trying to tell you that time doesn't exist. It's trying to tell you not to worry about these things that I've had keeping you up at night. I don't like this at all. And so there are a few ways that we can settle that down a little bit as we communicate with the inner voice. So my favorite way is by getting out my voice memos app on my phone. And I pretty much record every single one of my inner voice sessions with myself, just because you never know what's going to show up. But also, this is a beautiful way to signal to the mind that it can rest. The mind doesn't need to be a part of the conversation. We're speaking directly to the inner voice and allowing it to come through. And by clicking that record button on my phone, I know and my mind knows, okay, I can go back and listen to this recording, so I don't need to remember what the inner voice is saying right now. I know that when it's time, I can go back and I can hear what the inner voice has said, so maybe it is safe for me to kind of like take a back seat right now. So that's one way, and this is in saying using your voice memos, you're actually going to be speaking directly, you're going to be speaking the words or saying what images are coming to you, or you're going to be speaking out loud feelings that are showing up in the body out loud to be captured in the voice memos app. So when the inner voice speaks, you are just a mouthpiece for the inner voice, and you're going to be speaking that out loud. You can also go to my Instagram if you want to hear like different sections of my own inner voice recordings. And if you're interested, I could drop like as a bonus episode, like a full inner voice session with a client. So you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So let me know if that is of interest to you. But with your Voice Memos app, like I said, you're going to be speaking out loud exactly what is coming to you. And this can be really, really powerful. So you're going to be asking the inner voice maybe yes or no questions or open-ended questions. Inner voice, what is the next best thing you'd like me to do about this situation? And then you're going to tune into the place in the body where you have felt or heard from your intuition before, and you're going to allow that to come forward and you're going to speak it directly as you hear it. Another way that you can utilize any type of like recording as you're speaking with the inner voice or tuning into the inner voice is what I call aligned typing. So you can also journal through the inner voice. Like you can ask the inner voice questions and then physically write with a pen and paper. For some people, that just feels good. That's how I started, like keeping a record of what the inner voice was telling me. But very quickly, what I realized is that journey from the inner voice to my hand, to the pen, to the paper, it was too much like time, and my mind was getting too involved in the actual writing. That was too mindy for me, and it was getting too jumbled and too confusing. Some people absolutely love journaling based on what their inner voice is telling them. So this is all a preference. This is all what feels good. And this is also part of the play and the curiosity and the experimentation. So try it and see if you love it. And if you don't, try something else. Ask your inner voice what to do, right? Inner voice, this doesn't feel right, but how can I record the messages that you're sending and just see what the inner voice says? That would be so fun. So once I realized that for me, the journaling was too mindy, I started aligned typing. So for me, what that looks like is I literally like set my fingers up on my keyboard on my laptop. I close my eyes and I ask my inner voice for guidance. And as my inner voice sends me words or images or feelings, I'm just typing. And it's like one long run-on sentence. I don't worry about punctuation. I don't worry about spelling. But for me, being able to type, my mind doesn't have to be involved in that process. I can just type and I don't think about it. So that feels better for me. And then when I come out of, when I feel like it's done, it's complete, I'm done talking to my inner voice, I come back and I read through that like Word document or that Google Doc. And at that point, I can kind of piece together like, okay, that's a sentence. And I mean, this is how I write posts. This is how I figure out how much to charge for my programs. This is how I get ideas for my programs in the first place. Different concepts that I want to be talking about or coaching about, mastermind topics. Like, it's amazing what flows through when I do my aligned type. So I hope that this information was helpful to you. This was so fun for me to talk about. This was another request that I received through Instagram. So if you have any other requests about integrating inner voice work into your everyday life, please send them my way. You can find me at Instagram at Jessica Lee Laib. That's jessica.leigh.laib, Laib. And I take all of your messages super seriously because I want to show you how you can access this like portal of incredible wisdom into your life. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. This is your reminder that you are enough, you are worthy, and you are loved. You can find me over at Instagram at Jessica Lee Laib and my website at nomoreshouldlife.com. If you or someone you love is a high-achieving woman looking to activate your inner voice and embrace your shadow self to claim your soul-aligned life, send me a DM and let's do this.